who owns who owns the national forests? And if you ask people on the street, a lot of them would say the national government owns the national forests. But really, in fact, the people of the United States own the national forests. We designate the federal government to manage our lands on our behalf. And that means we need to have public input into how those lands will be managed, or else the managers, which is the government, won't know what the owners, which is us, want with their land. So in the case of the national forests, which is a division of the Department of Agriculture, that is, they create a document called a forest plan. Those of you who have worked with the Bureau of Land Management in the past might recognize the term resource management plan. That's the BLM's term for this same concept. In the National Forest, it's called the Forest Plan. And what that does is it lays out what the desired conditions and the desired objectives or uses will be for the lands that they're managing. They divide it all up into parcels, and each parcel gets a whole bunch of concepts laid into it as these are how it will be managed for these desired conditions of the resources and these desired outcomes or uses of the resources. The GMUG is currently in that process of creating that document called the Forest Plan, which will be hopefully used to guide their management for the next 20 to 30 years. The last time this was completed was in 1983. We are still operating under the 1983 Forest Plan. It was revised significantly in about 2002 or thereabouts. Then they started a process like the one we're in now, that created a draft forest plan in 2005, and then that was withdrawn. And there were court cases. It's been a bumpy process. There was another draft submitted in 2007, and then that one was withdrawn. I think with the direction with input from senators from Colorado and the Bush administration. They began the process all over again in 2014 with what's called a scoping process, which is the staff do a lot of work on trying to collect public input and also do their own research on what the conditions are that currently exist and what the current management is. Then they create a plan, and the plan has to have an environmental impact statement because of a court order. And the environmental impact statement, or EIS, has four alternatives that Nick mentioned a moment ago. Alternative A for this forest plan is the plan, basically leave the management just as it is. Alternative B, or for B as in boy, is the plan for what the staff have concluded is the best balancing of all the input and their knowledge and their knowing how they manage things. That's their recommended plan. Alternative C, as in Charlie, is the plan for maximum development or extraction of the resources. How do we get the most use out of the resources possible? And alternative D, as in Duncan, my middle name, alternative D is the plan for how to maximize preservation of the resources, or conservation. It just happens, maybe it doesn't just happen, that the members of the Western Colorado Alliance bias toward alternative D. We have more members that are interested in conservation than in extraction or development of these resources. And particularly, some of us have been on a public lands committee. On the public lands committee, that has been a lot of our objective, is how do we maximize toward desired conditions of wildness and naturalness, and desired outcomes of those wild places being available for the wildlife, being available for the ecosystems, being available for recreational uses that do not harm those wildlife and ecosystem values. Foot access primarily, hunting, fishing, hiking, bird watching, those would be the recreational uses that go with those natural conditions. The Forest Service naturally has to work very hard to balance a lot of competing interests and a lot of competing values. When I was young, I remember going into areas that had been logged, and I was told, oh, this is a multiple use area, which meant that from the Department of Agriculture, their crop is trees. So we take the lumber out, and whatever is left over, anybody else that wants to use it after we're done, they're welcome to it. That's what multiple use used to mean. Now it is much more collaborative, much more recognizing these competing interests. And I was just talking with Carmine Lockwood this morning, and he used to be a supervisor for timber extraction and other areas in the Forest Service out of the Delta office. And he said that there has been a lot of collaborative activity in our area right here and many of our members have been involved in it, that has made a tremendous difference in making this plan much less contentious than it otherwise would have been, because people have gotten together and tried to say, how can we balance these competing interests? Other users that are very powerful voices, motorized users, as I said, timber and lumber extraction, grazing interests have a loud voice, fire suppression. We want the point of these comments, now that these alternatives have been released, we have 90 days to make comments so that we can say, this is how we want the plan to look based on our values. We want to be representing these particular values that are our values. If you don't agree with all the values that we represent, that's fine. Make your comments the way you want to. But if you resonate with what we have to say, you're welcome to pay attention to what we have to present. We have a lot of information to present. It's going to go by really quickly. Don't try to catch it all. Just try to catch the parts that are the most interesting to you. Nick, we were going to say that if people have questions, if you need a clarification of something that has just been said, if you could post that in the chat, then Nick will filter those and alert the speakers if we want to answer them immediately, or if we want to hold them till later in the presentations here. So I think that's enough about what a forest plan is and what the comments are about. So if we go to this slide there, Nick, thank you. Tonight we're going to kind of highlight 3 different areas. Sherry is going to be on in a little bit later and talk about the Canna Creek area, which is the drainage right above Whitewater on the west side of the Grand Mesa, and a couple of areas up near Paonia. Rose will be talking about Blaine Basin and Blue Lakes, which is right at the foot of Mount Sneffels. I can see Mount Sneffels from my house, and right at the bottom there are some magnificent parcels, and she'll be talking about those just outside of Ridgeway. And then, but coming up first is Andy Goldman, who is going to tell you about a place that's very precious and dear to my heart, Kelso Mesa. Very little known. It's 35,000 acres, kind of right in the middle of the length of the Uncompahgre Plateau. It's the headwaters that flow into Escalante Creek, which many of you know has not a paved road, but a major road runs right up the middle of it. And at the end of the really developed part, it branches into these wonderful canyons, gorgeous forests. So without further ado, Andy, tell us about Kelso Mesa.
Okay. Hi, thanks, Jim. There are a lot of areas on the GMUG that have been designated as recommended for wilderness. And we focused on Kelso because it is really the crown jewel of the Uncompahgre Plateau. As Jim has so eloquently stated, it's the largest and only remaining unspoiled, pristine area on the Uncompahgre Plateau. It's been designated a roadless area by the state of Colorado, but unlike wilderness, roadless areas in general permit the use of motorized off-road vehicles like ATVs and dirt bikes on any trails within their boundaries. The area was found by the Forest Service in its early analysis to have, and I quote, a high degree of wilderness characteristics due to its natural appearing vegetation and wildlife communities and opportunities for high quality, primitive, unconfined recreation. Kelso is also unspoiled because it's in large part inaccessible due to private land holdings on its borders, as well as its location on a remote part of the plateau. It's in Mesa County and it's subject to the Grand Valley District Ranger Office. Along with the Dominguez roadless area to its north and its connection to the Dominguez-Escalante National Conservation Area below, it provides high quality habitat for big game and other important wildlife. It's currently visited mainly by hunters, hikers, campers, and anglers. So the issue is, it was determined by the Forest Service that it could also be managed as wilderness, and that's a critical requirement in the forest plan, but only in the central and eastern portions of Kelso Mesa and not in the section to the north. The manageable section was recommended for management as lands with wilderness characteristics in alternative D, Dog, Duncan. The special, that's the conservation alternative, but not so in the preferred Forest Service alternative B. So as it stands now, it's been left out. So what are we asking? We're asking the Forest Service to include Kelso Mesa as lands with wilderness characteristics from alternative D, as is consistent with its own analysis of the area. If you can, add why this area is important to you. And if you need some more information, we're going to have some more resource materials about the area if you've never visited it in the chat at the end. Secondly, the Forest Service looks at wild and scenic recommendations for rivers and streams during the forest plan revision. Alternative B, the preferred alternative, recommends wild and scenic designation for portions of the North Fork of Escalante Creek, as well as Kelso Creek, from near the Divide Road down to the Forest Service boundary, because of its unspoiled naturalness and its presence of the most genetically pure population of green lineage Colorado River cutthroat trout in the entire state. The Forest Service calls this an outstanding remarkable value, or an ORV. That's important for what to be designated as a wild and scenic river. So what are we asking? We're asking the Forest Service to keep the wild and scenic recommendation for the North Fork of Escalante and Kelso Creeks in their final agency alternative. We're also asking to include the Dry Fork of Escalante Creek, which was found to be eligible as wild and scenic in their 2005 analysis due to some remarkable botanical features that has some tall spruce along the riparian area that's unique to anywhere else in Colorado. But this was not carried forward in the current plan, mysteriously. Also, we're asking the Forest Service to reanalyze the Middle Fork of Escalante Creek for its wild and scenic values, as their rationale for excluding it lacked any transparent standards for doing so. We have a hike scheduled into the area, so you can see for yourself how outstanding and remarkable it is. Finally, we want the Forest Service to strengthen their standards for the wildlife management areas, or WMAs. They're proposing applying a WMA on top of a roadless area for Kelso and calling it good. And this is not as high a level of protection as managing it as wilderness. But they're also recommending that the summer recreation standard, or ROS, for Kelso be maintained as semi-primitive, non-motorized, while not as restrictive as the primitive designation asked for in alternative D. Both designations prescribe no new motorized trails in the future management of the area. So what are we asking now? We're asking the Forest Service to include the primitive recreation management prescription for Kelso from alternative D. We need the highest level of protection possible for this unique area. Ask that no new motorized roads requirement be adhered to in the Forest Service final plan. And if alternative B's management plan for Kelso remains in the final analysis, ask the Forest Service to strengthen wildlife management area standards. Recommend that standards or guidelines for maintaining big game habitat require or encourage maintenance of habitat blocks at least 500 acres in size, having no roads or other human intrusions in all areas assigned to the area. If you wish, you can cite and support the Forest Service own desired conditions, which you can see on the bottom of the screen in front of you. So to recap, Kelso is the only big parcel left on the plateau that remains relatively unspoiled and has no congressionally designated protections. It needs the highest level of protection possible, which could be achieved by all three prescriptions in alternative D: wilderness level management, wild and scenic river designations, and a mostly primitive recreation opportunity spectrum. And with that, unless anybody has any questions, I will turn it over to Rose.
Yeah, thank you. And if you have questions, we can put them in the chat too. And
Okay.
here we go, Rose. Oh. Sorry, 1 second, folks. Technical difficulties. There we are.
Okay. So I'm talking tonight about Blue Lakes and Blaine Basin. They're both in Ouray County, just outside of Ridgway. And we're asking you to do two things if you so choose. One is to ask that Blaine Basin be added to the Mount Snuffles Wilderness Area. It has all the wilderness characteristics that Blue Lakes does. It's an amazing place. So that's one thing that we're asking you to do, is write one comment asking that that be put into the wilderness area, the Mount Snuffles Wilderness Area. That would be alternative D. And then also Blue Lakes is in a wilderness area, but it's not being managed as a wilderness because there's way too many people up there. You don't have the wild and solitude, wild feeling and the solitude up there because there's hundreds of people up there every single day. So in order to do some things that you might want to say to back that up, and they should be two different comments. Don't give a comment that includes both of these. Do separate ones. But some things that you might talk about would be to manage these areas to preserve the wilderness and primitive characteristics. One of the wilderness characteristics is preserve the natural quality. And what we really need to do is keep the ecological systems free from the effects of modern civilization. And one of those would be to keep the water clean. The water coming out of that basin should be absolutely pristine, but there are so many people going up there and backpacking and putting tents up. One Saturday in September, there were 162 backpackers that headed up there in just a 6-hour period. So you know that how many cat holes that is. So that really is not, it's not lending itself to clean water. And the natural grasses and the wildflowers are just being trammeled. People are walking out in the middle of them to take pictures. It's really not, they're really being messed up. They're going away. So we need to protect those. And then protecting a significant source of drinking water for the residents on the south end of Log Hill Mesa. that's where I live, and we get our water from part of our water from that basin. And I'm really not very comfortable with all the cat holes that go up there. So what we would, maybe you might say how that would happen would be to limit the number of hikers and backpackers in the Blue Lakes Basin, and then add and then also, well, that, and we're just talking about, just add it to that. And then also you could add that these same characteristics would go for Blaine Basin. Another quality you might talk about in your comment would be the untrammeled quality of both of these places. We need to preserve the flora and so that the native trees, grasses, and wildflowers can thrive. And one way to do that would be to do the overnight campsites, limit the number, get a permit system in, and limit the number and where they can actually camp for the evening. And so we don't have the tent footprints just trammeling all the wildflowers and grass. And then another is that we need to have opportunities for solitude, and the wilderness characteristic is solitude, and it's not happening for sure right now at Blue Lakes and Blaine Basin. We want to preserve that. It has a wonderful solitude. So how you do that would be to reduce the number of hikers and backpackers via a permit system in the Blue Lakes Basin. And you might not like a permit system. Personally, I don't either, but I would not advocate a permit system for Blaine Basin, but at this point anyway. But Blue Lakes is just being overrun and abused and overused. So one thing that with all of this, one thing that you might do is say that you support Alternative D's summer recreation prescription of primitive for the Blue Lakes and Blaine Basin areas to achieve these above goals that I just talked about. And can you go to them? I want to show you the difference between Plan B and Plan D. So if you look in the really dark green or the forest green color, that is what they are proposing to do to manage as primitive in Plan B. Now go to the next slide. There, see how it expands? The forest green, this just has more of the land here is protected as being managed for primitive. So in conclusion, what we're asking you to do is write one comment asking that Blaine Basin be put into the wilderness area up there. It is part of the Core Act. If the Core Act gets in, then it will be a wilderness area, but it's nice if they hear it from other places. And then another comment would be to ask them to manage Blue Lakes as a wilderness area, which they're doing a horrible job of right now. There are just way too many people up there, and we don't have the wild wilderness feeling of being up there. So with that, I pretty much hit my, I went pretty close to my 5 minutes. So there you go. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Nicely done. Well done, Rose. We'll pass it over to Sherry.
Oh, that's right, Sherry. Yeah. Oops, I see that.
And yes, Erica, we'll get you that too. Don't worry. Erica asked about a list of items. To you, Sherry. And you are on mute right now.
Sorry. Thank you. I want to talk about 3 areas on the Grand Mesa. And the first one is Canna Creek. This is the area directly above the Lands End Road. So if you traveled up Lands End Road, which is kind of a challenging road to travel up, and get up on the top, that whole area is the Canna Creek area. And currently, and for some time, it has been the Grand Junction Municipal Watershed Area. And there is an agreement to manage it as watershed protection area, which is a great thing to do because protecting that water is important to so many people and so many places. The Grand Mesa, as you probably know, is an area of about 300 bodies of water, some of them quite small, some of them big enough that motorized boats can travel on. But that water eventually goes downhill to the communities that surround the Grand Mesa. So communities like Palisade pull their water from Grand Mesa. Other communities have springs. Much of the water in those springs came from the top of Grand Mesa at one point. This area also is greatly used by wildlife, both for feeding and winter protection, and also for production of their young. Anglers, fishing people really appreciate this area because there's several different species of trout up there and lots of good fishing lakes. And because of this process, this Forest Service planning process, several different citizen groups have looked at the area and made proposals of areas that they think should be considered as wilderness. And the Canna Creek area has been proposed by 2 different citizens' proposals to be designated as wilderness. Canna Creek is the area that the Ute tribe, when they were living in this area, and other indigenous tribes used to travel up to the top of Grand Mesa. And it's John Otto of Colorado National Monument fame worked in that area, in the Canna Creek area, trying to put in trails to the top. So it has a long history of people looking at that as a way to enter the area. I want to talk about 2 other areas also. Muddy Creek is one of 6 areas up there that different citizens' proposal have suggested should be given wilderness designation. Muddy Creek is a large area, 61,000 acres. It's directly north of Paonia. It's the northernmost tributary of the Gunnison River. And again, this is an area that definitely should be protected because of its vital water source for the communities that live around it. It's also a part of the Thompson Divide area. It's a middle elevation area, and we have almost no wilderness protected in the middle elevation kind of area. Muddy Creek has one of the largest stands of aspen in the world. And because of its large size and water and open areas, it's home to a variety of wildlife, elk, moose, mule deer, Gunnison sage grouse. All of those animals live in this area, and they deserve the protection that having a large, unimpacted by human area would give them. The last area that I want to talk about is Mule Park Important Bird Area. And this is one of the things that we can definitely praise the Forest Service staff for doing. This is an area of aspen and then open stands. And there's a number of birds that really want to have their nests in aspen, both because it's a fairly soft wood. So birds such as, I forgot what kind of bird it is. Birds such as woodpeckers find it really easy to make cavities in the wood and build their nests in those cavities. There's a species of bird that is called the purple martin, western purple martin, and they like areas where there's an aspen stand so they can make a nest in the aspen, but also places where there's openness, no large trees growing, so they can observe what's going on out there and feel like they're safe and that it's a comfortable area to have their young. I don't know of many areas at all that the Forest Service has looked at in the way that they've looked at Mule Park and said, with the advice of a number of other groups, in this case, the Audubon group, recognizes this as an important bird area because of its structure, the cavity nesting areas, and then the open areas for the birds that want to be able to see so that they are sure that they are safe. But this is an area that is proposed to protect those birds. So it's definitely something that we can say to the Forest Service, thank you for making this area designated in a way that protects the bird species that find it the perfect situation for them to reproduce their young and to live. And I think I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, nicely done. All right, folks. So our final portion here, let me just get, okay, so you're all ready to go? All right, go ahead and write those comments. That was easy, right? No, don't worry. We're here to help you. I know there's a lot of information. And so what we're going to do here is, first step, I'm going to take us off this screen after I kind of hit the main points. So we're hoping from each of you 3 separate comments. Loading up one comment with all the things we talked about doesn't really help us. They just kind of consider it one, and we'll put it in a certain section that won't be beneficial to the goals that we have in mind. We're hoping for quantity and quality, and we'll help you with the specific language that makes that happen. Tonight, we're only going for one. And I want to make sure that that comment's just, we need more wilderness, and then you submit it. That's not going to get us anywhere. They have to be a little more specific to the area. If you know nothing, if this was the first time you've ever heard about any of these places, that is just fine. I was able to generate, I haven't been to Kelso Mesa, and I was able to generate a comment from the resources we're about to give you. Just think of it back of when you were a kid and you had to write complete sentences to your answers, really mix and matching and trying to get some variety in there. So with that being said, let me take myself off.
Today, we're excited to share one of the first episodes of our new podcast.
Oop. Let me get us off of sharing screen. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good to see your lovely faces. All right. So our first step is I am going to share the Forest Service public comment page. And what you're going to do is in the chat, I'm putting it in right now. I need everybody. We're going to do, oh, that went to the rating room. Sorry. Everybody is going to click on that link. So when you click on the link, give me a thumbs up and you have it open. We're going step by step with this here, folks. So I've seen a few thumbs up. Has everybody got it? Everybody got it? Okay, good. Charlie, you good? Okay, thumbs up there. All right. So
I don't have the link.
you're not able to find it there, Nancy?
No. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. It should be
I saw
Um,
it once and then it just disappeared.
Okay, let's get it in there one more time for you. It'll be coming your way in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, got it.
All right, so when you get to that link, you will scroll all the way to the bottom. And you can see on the bottom, it has information that you can fill in, right? All your private first name, last name, address. And at the bottom of that is the letter text. That's where we're going to be writing our comments. So that is going to be step 1. Step 2 is I am now sharing our comment writing document. This is all the points that you've seen tonight, and it will lead you through how you can make these comments. So document in there, go ahead and select that one too. So you'll have both documents. You need to be using both documents to submit your comment. Thumbs up if you're able to open that document. Got a few there. Adrian, good. Karen Rose, got it. Rose Evans, Casey, Steve.
What's the document called, Nick?
It should just say docs.google.
Oh, I don't have it.
I'll put
I
it
don't
in
see
the chat
either.
again. Did you see it pop up that time, Mary? Looks like Charlie got it.
Now I lost the comment.
Don't worry about that one for right now. Mary, if you scroll to the bottom and you can select the chat area, if you click on that, the document should be the most recent one posted.
In chat.
Mhm.
Is it? But you're looking for a red, oh, I see it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So that will give you the step-by-step. I'm going to share my screen again real quick, just so we can look at this whole thing together. And then we'll have time to write in your comment. So let me share. Okay, so what you're going to do is start with letter A. You're going to think through, look at all the different regions that we have. So we have Kelso, and here are the items that you can comment on. Remember, 1 comment per item. Then you have the Blue Lakes, Blaine's Mason. I need to add that in. Area. That is also 1 of 3 that you can comment. And finally, Grand Mesa. 3 areas that you can comment. So read through, first pick your area. That's step 1. Just 1. All right, that sounds good, Adrian. Step 2 is if you need to use some of these key terms. So this is where the precision comes in. Again, if you have not been to these areas, that's okay. This will really help us. So if you want to help your language and add some more important items to beef up your public comment, use the key terms, refer to those. Talks about what makes a wild area. We talked about the importance of making more wild areas. You can add in the scenic language. You know, it's areas like Kelso Mesa that has a very variety and visual differences, and solitude as well. Then finally, personalize it. You know, for me, for Grand Mesa, I was lucky enough to go fishing there. I've been fishing there a couple times. So I just mentioned that because we talked about the watershed. And even if, again, if you haven't been there, be creative is what I'll say. Be creative. Imagine that you're Jim walking around and you really appreciate scenic and solitude and want to make sure that those places remain, much like in Kelso Mesa. And if you need an example of what exactly, you can put in there, don't copy and paste. But again, this is written by someone that has not been to all of these areas, as in me. So you can look through those. So there are additional resources at the bottom too. I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to talk for a second. Yes, Jim.
Nick, I wanted to clarify a point about wilderness. And when you bring in these key terms and with wild, and you referenced Wilderness Act, it will diminish our credibility a little bit if we don't recognize that the Forest Service cannot designate wilderness. That is beyond their capacity. The only body that can designate wilderness is Congress. And they're also the only ones that could undesignate wilderness, which fortunately they haven't done yet. But the Forest Service, what they can do is they can continue to preserve the wild qualities or the wilderness qualities of these places so that they continue to be available. And then at some point, Congress may decide to add an area, as they did in 1993. They added a whole bunch of places in Colorado to the wilderness system, but they weren't worth saving. If we don't save them now, then they won't be worth saving later if Congress ever decided to get around to doing that. So what we're asking the Forest Service to do is to manage these things for those wild qualities in the meantime, and maybe even recommend it to Congress, but I don't think they're likely to do that.
Got it. Thank you, Jim. Rose?
Actually, Al, I just ended.
Okay. I think Jim's last sentence may have answered my question, as it turns out. I know that the Forest Service can't designate it, but do they commonly recommend to Congress areas for wilderness designation?
In the current atmosphere, no. They were required with earlier surveys to do their full inventories of all their lands and say, these are the ones we recommend and these are the ones, and basically just say, these are the ones we do recommend. And then citizens groups said, we want these other lands to be included as well. But in the current atmosphere, it's really unlikely that they will add any new recommendations. And in order to do that, it's really expensive. They need an enormous amount of staff time. So I wouldn't push that point very hard right now that they would make that recommendation to Congress. We can make our recommendations to Congress and then let Congress work on it.
But aren't there areas that the Forest Service manages as a wilderness? I mean, they're designated, managed as wilderness.
Yes,
right?
Yes, and we can ask for that the management be for wilderness characteristics, to preserve the wilderness characteristics.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
I'll add that, manage for wilderness characteristics qualities. Okay.
Jim?
Nick,
Yeah, one second, Andy. So Erica asked, can there be a comment length limit? No, it's there's no limit on the amount of words, and you can also comment as many times. Andy.
I just noticed that the coalition recommendations was blank on my screen.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I will check that out. So today, folks, by the way, this is our first run through. You all are our dry rehearsal or our dress rehearsal. So thank you. Wanted to see from folks that are new to this call, how are you feeling? I just threw a lot at you. We all just did. Is this making sense? Do you feel, Mary Sorensen, do you feel comfortable writing a comment?
It would take me a little while, but yes, I feel
Okay.
like you've given me enough information, but I'm wondering if it would also be helpful for us to read or to understand the whole plan.
The only danger with that, and I need to commend our speakers today, the plan is 550 plus pages.
I understand.
Yeah, so the plan is linked to that comment the little worksheet. At the very end, you can look through the plan. It is linked there. But that was more of our just highlights.
Nick,
Yeah.
could
and then we'll
could
go
I
keep-
suggest that if there are particular things that you would like to learn from the plan, you be in touch with us separately and we can help guide you. Those of us that have looked it over a little bit more, I certainly haven't read it. Andy's done an amazing amount of reading. If you would kind of focus what you're looking for, we can maybe like a librarian kind of help you find it in the plan and direct you to where you might look for it.
Cool.
Casey has her hand up too. You may have
She
noticed.
did, but just, I think I hear her talking to somebody else now. Oh, there she is. Hello.
Okay, kind of a silly question, but I'm looking at the comment section and you put in your information, you know, like first name, last name, address, and then it says province/region. Is that where I would put like Mesa County, or would I put, like, I'm making my comment on Canna Creek, so would I put Canna Creek?
I think it's the region that you are living in.
So it's Mesa County, right?
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to verify.
No, that's okay. Good question. There are no stupid questions, Casey. Only stupid people.
Hey, Nick. Nick, can you
Yeah,
hear
we'll
me?
go Charlie and then we can go Rose.
So just for mechanics of this, are you going to be able to send us the links that you posted in chat so that we can just work on it independently?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. You'll get an email tomorrow.
Okay.
And that can attach to Karen's question. Comment period goes through the 12th. So we're hoping that if everyone today made a comment and made 3, we're hoping for 3, that's 54. That's awesome. If you all made a comment on each one, that's 9, and we've hit our goal of 150. So that's even more spectacular. And I will love you all even more than I do now. And once you get in the flow, it only takes a few minutes to get out a comment. Rose/Al.
I consider your no stupid questions to be a challenge, so I'll try. I'm just wondering how much danger there is in our comments all sounding too similar to one another. I know that in some cases, they just ignore comments that they think came all from one organized source. Maybe we need to emphasize, get creative and original, not just go with your sample wording.
Yeah, I would say for sure, do your best to, be creative with it. No copying and pasting allowed, ladies and gentlemen. You can use some of the specific language I think will hopefully help you. And also in that document, and I'll be emailing it to you all tomorrow with just a recap of instructions. It has our GMUG coalition talking points too. So that involves other regions and you can pull from that document as well to expand. Go for it, Jim. Yep.
A little bit additional, another way we can make these personal is any personal connection that you have. So if you've never been to Muddy Creek, but you know that it wasn't Muddy Creek, it was the bird habitat. Which one was the bird habitat, Sherry?
Yes.
Oh, it is Muddy Creek. Yeah, so
Mule
but-
Park.
But if you say that you go into places and do bird watching, and you want the opportunity to be able to go to Muddy Creek for bird watching, that then makes it personal. So how you would use or how you would benefit from the management recommendations that you're making does make it personal, and that's something that doesn't appear on forms, form letters.
Okay, nice. Thank you. And yes, Diane, I'll resend talking points given today. Casey, thank you for submitting. Casey submitted her comment in the chat. And Jim and Andy well, Sherry, this is your area. I wanted to see. I think it looks good. I think it looks good. Do you see it, Sherry?
No, I'm writing my comment.
Oh. Well, here's the short and sweet. I think it fits for our purposes.
Okay.
This was Casey talking about Canna Creek. Water preservation is crucial to the future of our communities. As a fisherwoman, hiker, and human being, water is an essential part of my life. So making it personal, I've been fishing several times. Oh, I just lost it. Sorry. I've been fishing several times in the Canna Creek watershed area and have reviewed the plans for the Forest Service. Oh, it's not happy. When it comes to this area, I believe it is of importance to designate the area as wilderness. So that's put in wilderness. The wildlife deserves our protection. Humans deserve the scenic area. And my chat's not working very well. I'm sorry. But Casey, I think it's great. I think that fits perfectly. So add personal, use some of the language, and managed for, actually, we should add more managed for wilderness qualities, I think, right, Jim, versus as a wilderness area?
Yeah, yeah, to designate this as an area to be managed for wilderness qualities would be better, slightly better language. It's not gonna, it's beautiful, Casey, really, really lovely, really well done, excellent example. A+.
Oh, all right,
If
wow.
we want it to be an A++, then we would switch it to designate this as an area to be managed for wilderness qualities.
Well, good job, Casey. Made me proud. Okay, well,
But actually, I would add wilderness qualities and watershed protection. Could make it even better.
110%. Okay, folks. Well, last ask I will make of you, and I will again send all these documents tomorrow morning, including the slides. Yep, for sure. Karen, those will be in there as well. If you are interested, we are still going to Kelso. Our last one got rained out, snowed out, winded out. So if you are interested in checking out Kelso Mesa, it's going to be a full day hike. It takes around 5 hours, but it's a gorgeous, gorgeous area. The options we have is next Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. If you are interested, you can just put in the chat, yes, and then a date that you would like to go. And if you're unable to make it, that's totally fine. But wanted to make that offer to you folks, and that will help. We'll be deciding the day. Jim and Andy, I think we decide by tomorrow on when we'll be.
You're talking about a week from tomorrow?
Yes.
Said?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Next week.
The 22nd, 23rd, or 24th.
Okay.
The Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, a little over a week from now. And
Rose and Al. Yeah.
Question, since two of those dates are Saturday and Sunday, what's the hunting season situation? Because most hunters are out on weekends.
that's part of why we selected those dates, because there's a hunting season that ends on the 20th on Wednesday. And the next one doesn't start until around the 1st of November, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's still worth having orange or red or something that makes you not look like an elk. And you may have noticed this picture on one of those slides of a hunter that we saw coming out with his enormous elk draped over a horse. That was when Andy and Leah and I were in there a couple of years ago. at around this same time.
Great. Well,
And
thank you all.
there might be an option for a longer hike as an option for that same day. If people have a lot of energy they need to burn off, I could probably be persuaded to divide the group, and some of us go quite a bit further than the others.
Great.
Hey,
Well-
Nick, just quickly.
Mhm.
I made a couple comments. I don't mean to confuse people, but I was looking at the maps here. And they're pretty sophisticated, but they use both words, wilderness and wildlife, and they kind of seemed interchanging a little bit. So I would suggest people take a look at those different maps that are in the plan. Might be helpful.
For sure. For sure. Well, that sounds great, folks. We're at 6:32. Thank you for hanging on a little longer. My computer's actually going to die here shortly. So I appreciate you all so much. This was so helpful. We're going to be doing another one for people that weren't able to make it today. The date is TBD. It will be sometime in November. But yeah, if you can, again, document will be resent to you tomorrow. And if you can send in 1, 2, hopefully 3, but you can go all the way to 500 if you'd like. So thank you again. Have a great night. I appreciate you all very, very much. Thank you to our speakers, Jim, Andy, Sherry, and Rose. Excellent job. And we will see you all later. Thanks again.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Here.
Bye.
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 Thanks, guys.